guys, it's Natalie. I hope everybody is doing super great. I am so excited. I am finally bringing you the video I have been talking about forever. Well, maybe not forever, but for a while. And that is the top 15 books of 2019 so far. Now, in 2019, I have read about 70 books. And keep in mind, I DNF a lot of books, which means out of those 70 books, they have all been 3-star or above. And because we have 15 books to get through, we do not have a bunch of time to just jibber jabber, so let's just jump right on into it. Really quick, you might notice that I'm not mentioning books like Cinder or the Renegades. I try to not mention books that I know you guys have already heard of 1,000 times. When I narrowed the list down to 20, that's what I looked at then. I said, what books have these guys already heard about a million bazillion times? So that's why you're not hearing about those. I'm really trying to show you books that maybe you haven't read that you might enjoy. I enjoyed it, so I'm thinking you might enjoy it. So like I said, quit jibber jabbering, let's just do it. All right, the first book I want to mention as one of the best books of 2019 so far would be the Dead Queens Club. This book is a YA retelling of the history of Henry VIII set in a modern day high school. Our main character is Cleves, who was his fourth wife, who acts as Henry VIII's best friend. Henry in this book is the most popular boy in school. His number is 8 on his football jersey. And we go through basically the history of Henry VIII. But if it all had happened in high school, that's right. 2 of his girlfriends do end up dead, just like the way 2 of his wives ended up beheaded. So this was a great read. If you don't know about Henry VIII, that's fine. You'll still enjoy it. If you do know about Henry VIII, oh my gosh, you're gonna super enjoy it. But yes, highly, highly recommend The Dead Queen Club by Hannah Capon. Now, the next book I'm going to tell you about is The Broken Girls by Simone St. James. In fact, this is the only book I've ever done an entire video about. This book is a mystery thriller with a touch of paranormal and a lot of heart. This book is told in 2 timelines. One is in the 1950s where we have 4 girls at a boarding school who grow super, super close, but they all keep seeing a weird ghost, and it's the same ghost they think, and then unfortunately one of them disappears. The other timeline takes place in 2014 with a journalist named Fiona who is investigating the death of her sister. Her sister's body was found on the grounds of the school in the 1990s after the school had already been shut down. And so, since we have the girl who disappeared in the 1950s, we have her sister who was found dead in the 1990s, and there was a girl earlier on in, I think maybe the turn of the century, maybe when the school was first opening, that also disappeared. Since we have 3 girls that have either disappeared or been killed, she really needs to get down to the bottom of this, and she really needs to do it fast because somebody has bought the property and they want to reopen the school. You cannot reopen a school where there's been 3 unsolved disappearances / murders. But this book not only was a great mystery thriller, it had great character development and it had a lot of heart to it. It was one of those books that when I was done, I was like, I have to tell the world they have to read this book. Wonderful. If you can check it out, please do. I really think you'll like it. All right, our next book is Close Enough to Touch by Colleen Oakley. We have 2 main characters in this one. We have Jubilee and we have Eric. Now, Jubilee's situation is really very unique. Jubilee is literally allergic to human touch, and she's kind of been living a reclusive life, as you can imagine, if you can't touch anybody without breaking out into a horrible allergic reaction and dying. But after her mother dies, she kind of runs out of money and she has no choice but to go out into the world. Luckily, she loves to read and she's able to get a job at her local library. Now, our other main character, Eric, is not without problems. He doesn't have that particular problem, but the boy's got problems. He's recently divorced, his daughter will not speak to him, his best friend has died, and now he is raising his son who has all kinds of emotional problems, as you would expect if your, parents died. And then these 2 characters' paths cross. And you might be, oh, and then they fall in love, and oh, how wonderful. Keep in mind, guys, she can't touch anybody. So you might want to back it up and think, well then what does happen? I don't want to tell you, but I have to tell you, the book is really great. And what does happen is you go on an incredible journey with these 2 characters, and it made it a just wonderful story you should definitely read. I gave this book 4 stars. Don't Turn Out the Lights by Bernard Minier. And I don't know why I did that, because as I thought about this, this is definitely a 5-star read. In this book, our main character is Christine, and on Christmas Eve, she finds this weird note in her mailbox. She lives in an apartment building, and she's pretty sure it's like a suicide note, but she's also pretty sure that it's not for her because, you know, the details of the letter, she doesn't know what they're talking about. It really sounds like it's for someone else. And after, you know, she knocks on all the doors of all the other apartments saying, you know, hey, you think this might be for you? You know anybody suicidal? And, you know, comes up empty. She does contact the police and turn the letter over. I mean, she's not heartless, but, you know, she doesn't know who this is or what it's about. And it's Christmas Eve and she has plans. So she feels that she's done the right thing. But don't you know, problems start happening. Big problems. She starts getting all these weird voicemails and emails saying, you let her die. And of course, she's thinking, I let who die? And that is just the start. And after that, her life just gets flipped upside down crazy. She doesn't know who's on her side, who's not on her side. This book does tend to get a little bit scary, hence the name, Don't Turn Out the Lights. Yeah, you're not going to want to turn out the lights while reading this. There are definitely some spooky parts. There were times when I was reading this that I got goosebumps when there were certain twists and turns. I was like, no way. But if you enjoy mystery thrillers, this is a great one. Like I said, should have rated it 5 stars. Check it out. Now this next book, yes, it's really popular and you might be thinking, I thought you weren't mentioning super popular books, but yeah, this one might be going down as the best book of 2019, so I had to mention it, and it was Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. In this one, our main character is Jason, who is kidnapped, and he discovers that there is more than one reality. There are multiple realities. In fact, almost every time you make a decision, the realities splinter, and there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, if not maybe millions of you out there in other realities. And I love about science fiction, or what I love about science fiction, is that they back this up with so much science. It really has you thinking, whoa, maybe there really are all these realities, but they sure make it make sense in this book. And I know this is so many people's favorite book, even people who really aren't into sci-fi thrillers. This would be the exception. If you like sci-fi thrillers, you're definitely going to like it. If you're kind of like on the fence, you know, sci-fi thrillers, I can either take them or leave them. This is one you're going to love. And even if you don't like sci-fi thrillers, I still cannot imagine anybody not loving this book. Like I said, it is a contender for one of the best, if not the best book of 2019. So definitely check it out if you haven't checked it out already. All right, our next book on the list is The Stars Never Rise by Rachel Vincent. Our main character is Nina. This takes place in the not so far future where the church has taken over the government because demons have taken over the earth and basically decimated our populations. So we need the church to kind of take over to kind of save the rest of us. And Nina discovers that she is a natural born exorcist, which is very handy to be at this time in this book. After discovering that she's a natural-born exorcist, she starts learning that the world isn't exactly as she thought it was, and she finds a group of other young natural-born exorcists, or people who have some kind of magical, I don't know if you call it magical, I guess sort of magical powers that she teams up with, and they're kind of on the run and trying to figure things out. And this is going to be, no, this is a duology. Well, I was going to say this will be a trilogy. No, this is a duology. I do have the second book. I haven't got a chance to read it yet, but I cannot wait to read it because this book definitely left you wanting more. So I definitely recommend this one as well. Why do I keep saying I recommend? I recommend all these books. They're the best 15 books of 2019 so far. That's silly for me to keep saying, and you might want to check this out. You're going to want to check out all of them because I think all of them are really good. For those of you who watch my videos regularly, you should have known that Megan Miranda was going to pop in there sometime. And since I've read so many Megan Miranda books, I had to pick my favorite thus far. And my favorite thus far is The Safest Lies. Our main character in this one is Kelsey. And a long time ago, before she was born, her mother was kidnapped. In fact, Kelsey is kind of a result of that kidnapping, if you know what I mean. Being that she was kidnapped and obviously traumatized, the mother never leaves the house. And this house is the most locked, most well-alarmed, probably the most protected house you could ever be in. But then her mom goes missing again. And people are after Kelsey, and she doesn't even know who these people are. So she needs to figure out what really happened with that kidnapping, because it turns out her mom might not have been so honest with all the details, or what am I saying? Her mom might have not been so forthcoming with all of the details about her kidnapping, and I will leave it at that. But Megan Miranda is one of my new favorite authors. I think I've read like, what, 5, 6 books from her so far. All right, the next book I want to tell you about is The Tuscan Child by Rhys Bowen. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. This is a historical fiction that I just loved. This is another book that happens in 2 timelines. One timeline is a father, and the other timeline is the daughter, and the father and the daughter really don't have a close relationship. So the father's timeline happens in 1944. He was a British pilot during the World War II, obviously on the Allied side, and his plane goes down and he has to parachute out in Tuscany, Italy. Well, at this time, Tuscany, Italy was still occupied by Nazis. And as you know, Nazis, not so nice. He ends up hiding out in an abandoned monastery, and luckily a woman, Sophia, sees him and tries to help him as much as she can. The other timeline with the daughter happens in the 1970s, where she goes back to the family home because her father has passed away and she has to, get his things in order. And she finds an unopened return letter from Tuscany. There are so many startling revelations in this letter that she has to take off for Tuscany so she can get down to the bottom of it. She wants to learn more about her father's history and what happened when he was there. When she gets to Tuscany, she meets a lot of lovely people. This book might make you hungry because they talk a lot about food, but she sees that people are kind of wanting to keep a lot about that time kind of hidden. It takes her quite a while, quite a lot of digging to get the information that she needs. But guys, this is one of those books that once everything comes together and we find out what's going on, it just has an amazing ending. It was so wonderful. As soon as I was done, I was like, I have got to be reading myself some more historical fiction for sure. All right, the next book is The Night Tiger by Yangsze Chu, and this was one of my Reese Witherspoon book club review books from her Hello Sunshine book club. This book is set in 1930s colonial Malaysia, so this is a bit of a historical fiction as well. This is a book that also has 2 main characters. Our first character is a young lady named Ji Lin. She is an apprentice dressmaker, but she has to moonlight as a dancer to help pay off her mother's gambling debts. And let me clarify, when I say dancer, I mean she dances with young men like on the dance floor. We're not talking about exotic dancing back in this time period. But one night, one of the guys she dances with leaves her a very bizarre gift that sets her out on a crazy journey. Our second main character is Rin. He is a houseboy. He has 49 days to find the finger of his master who has just passed away, or otherwise his master will be forced to just roam the earth wanderously and aimlessly. So he really wants to find this finger and bury it with his master. It was his master's one last wish. And the town that this is set in, there's a lot of bizarre deaths happening. I mean, like really weird deaths. And then there's all these rumors about men turning into tigers, why we might have the title The Night Tiger. And this book, like I said, it's a touch of historical fiction. Well, it is historical fiction. We're in 1930s colonial Malaysia, and you definitely feel like you're in 1930s colonial Malaysia, but it has a touch of magic, a touch of, I don't know, maybe magical realism might be the right word for it. We have people that are visiting each other in their dreams. I mean, I just really enjoyed this book. Yeah, I definitely would say historical fiction with some magical realism, kind of like The Diviners, which was also one of my top books, but I figured you guys have heard of The Diviners so many times that I wouldn't put it in this list, but I read that in January and oh, did I like that book. So yeah, kind of like The Diviners, except not quite so long. All right, the next book is The Ship of Smoke and Steel by Django Wexler. This was the first book I got in my first LitJoy book box subscription. This is definitely a YA fantasy. Our main character is Ahsoka, who can control the power of Melos. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's in the book, it's M-E-L-O-S, Melos, which is a magical well of combat. Because of her magical power, she is forced on to this ghost ship that's mysterious. Nobody knows anything about it except that it's this huge ship that travels from port to port, demanding they give up one of their magical citizens or they will, decimate the town. So Ahsoka is chosen by her government for this lovely task. But she is also told by her government that once she gets there, they expect her to figure out how to take over this ship or they're going to kill her younger sister, who means everything to her. And like I said before, this ship is crazy big. I mean, think of like the biggest Royal Caribbean cruise ships we see in commercials and like, I think times it by 10. And maybe we'll get close to how big this ship is. Once she gets to the ship, she has to fight these crazy monster creatures like these giant crabs and many, many more. And I don't want to give away too much about what is on the ship, because when you get to the part where she's going to the ship, that was what was so exciting to me. And then the ship itself, you know, is very magical. But I don't want to give it away to you guys. Next, we're going to get to Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. And oh, this is a very special book. Our main character is Laurel, and 10 years ago, her 15-year-old daughter, who meant everything to her, disappeared. But since it is 10 years later, you know, she's putting her life back together, and she meets this charming man in this cafe named Floyd. And she likes Floyd a lot. They really, really hit it off, but she can't help but notice that his daughter Poppy reminds her so much of her own daughter. And because Poppy reminds her so much of her own daughter, this just kind of brings everything back and makes her kind of re-question everything about her daughter's disappearance, makes her start going back and digging even further and trying to get some answers. And this is definitely a mystery thriller. There's lots of twists and turns, lots of suspense, but this is, I think, the only book so far this year that has made me cry. Now, when I say cry, I don't mean like boo-hoo cry. I mean like maybe 1 or 2 tears trickled just a little bit down my cheek. But this was a very special book, very special. All right, next on our list is All the Birds in the Sky by Charlie Jane Anders. Once again, we have 2 main characters. We have Patricia, who is a natural-born witch, and we have Lawrence, who is a natural-born science genius. They become friends as children because they're both kind of awkward and really don't get along with the other kids. Well, the other kids don't get along with them, if you know what I mean. And so they befriend each other. But as they grow up, magic and science keep pulling them apart, and eventually the Earth itself is in danger because an ancient society of witches is going to war with this high-tech company, and they are on, you know, opposite sides, but yet they're best friends. This book not only had great character development, it had an amazing plot, but it had just really quirky, fun writing. There were times where just the way the author would word something would make me smile, because I was like, it would just be a quirky detail. So very, very much highly recommend this book. I can't imagine anybody not loving it. All right, I'm about to show you another book that is a contender for the best book of 2019. Of course, I'm not even thinking about the fact I have a whole another 6 months or 5.5 months of books that might knock these guys right off, but so far these are both contenders for the best one. And some of you might be going, I know what she's about to hold up. You probably are right. The Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman. This is a prequel to the book Practical Magic, which is also a movie. This story is about 3 siblings, Frances, Jet, and Vincent, who grew up in the 1960s in New York City. They're natural-born witches, but their family, specifically their mother, has turned away from the magical side of her family, so she doesn't really tell them about their magic. But of course, it doesn't take long for them to realize they have magical powers, and we see how they kind of deal with these magical powers. This family also must deal with a curse, because back in the 15 or 1600s, another family member, in a moment of weakness, she had a broken heart, and she thought she was helping her future family members by putting a curse that anybody that they fell in love with would die. I know that sounds horrible, but she thought she was helping them out. Obviously, she was not. So they have to deal with their magical powers, they have to deal with this curse, but this book is also about family, and it was just so wonderful, and it was one of those books that surprised me because I thought it was going to be just a light, fun read, and it was just a very deep read, and I loved it so much, and I wanted everybody to read it. It was also one of my books from the Reese Witherspoon Hello Sunshine book club, so it's another one of those books that I feel like I'm almost begging people, please read this book, please. All right, we are down to 2 more books. The next one is another sci-fi thriller, and this is The Dreaming Tree by Matthew Mather. Matthew Mather. Our main character in this book is Royce, and he's like the third guy in the entire world to get a full body transplant, meaning the only part of his body that he's originally his is his head. Everything from the neck down, somebody else's. And I think I mentioned in one of my wrap-ups, what made this book so interesting is that we think that all of our thinking, takes place in our brain, that essentially we're in our brain. But no, the way our nerve endings run and go through our entire body, we're not just in our brain. And so he starts getting thoughts and feelings from his, the person who is his donor, who he doesn't even know who it is. There's all these murders happening around him. He's having blackouts. He doesn't know if he's murdering them. He needs to find out who this host, whoever is the donor body. I keep calling it host, but whoever, donated the body or, left their body or whatever. He needs to figure that out. This book is super fast, lots of things going on, but I really enjoyed it and highly recommend it. Sci-fi thrillers are really becoming my thing this year. Before we get to the last book, let me quickly remind, since we do have a lot of new subscribers, please follow me on Twitter and Instagram. It's down in the description. I always follow whoever follows me right back. All right, let's get to the last book. This should be no surprise to those of you who watch regularly, and that would be Stepsister by Jennifer Donnelly. This book was so special. Now, this was an arc that I picked up at BookCon, but this book is out. You can now either buy it or I don't know if you can check it out or if it's, because it's still pretty new, but it is out if you want to read it. As you can see, being Stepsister, the main character is Isabel, who is one of Cinderella's ugly stepsisters. And as I said before, Isabel is not pretty and she doesn't keep her mouth. She says what she's thinking. She stands up for herself. She sometimes says a little bit too much, but this book talks a lot about how it's okay for women not to be gorgeous and it's okay for women to speak their minds. And what I also really loved about this book is they took the characters from Cinderella and they made all the characters well-rounded characters with good parts and bad parts. And we go on this amazing journey. It starts right when Cinderella is whisked away to the castle, and then we start Isabel's journey. And it's an amazing journey that not only she takes, but her other sister takes. And it's just a very special story that I just highly, 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 highly recommend that you read. So those are my top 15 books of 2019 so far. And thank you so much for watching. That's all I have for now, but I will see you in the next video. Check you out later. Bye-bye.